TetraCast.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
Why wait to see if you'll get something you like this Valentine's Day when you can go to BlueNile.com and find something you'll love? Whether you're looking to treat yourself to a little winter sparkle or show a galentine how much you appreciate them, Blue Nile offers a wide selection of high-quality designs, expert guidance, and free 30-day returns for the ultimate peace of mind. You can even design your own jewelry. Right now, save up to 50% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
On this episode of the SNSW Podcast, Michael Marcangelo, Joe Malkin, and Bob Kelly discuss the biggest takeaways from the first 2 weeks of the NFL, including the Patriots' last-second loss to the Seattle Seahawks and the Dallas Cowboys' last-second win versus the Atlanta Falcons. We also discuss our biggest worries about the Boston Celtics being down 2-1 in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Miami Heat, and discuss which team is for real and which team is heading home. But first, this episode is being brought to you by Boxo Crafts. Boxo is an arts and crafts-focused kid subscription box. Boxo is a parent-run company that combines creativity and convenience in one monthly package, delivered right to your door. Boxo's premier box, Boxo Holidays, contains 4 separate art projects to get you and your family into the holiday spirit. Whether it's Halloween, Hanukkah, or Easter, they've got you covered with holiday fun. Boxo, we can't wait to see you create. Check out boxocrafts.com and exclusively to our listeners, enter promo code SNSW for 10% off your first order. That's boxocrafts.com, promo code SNSW. The SNSW Podcast is also brought to you by National Voter Registration Day. This past Tuesday was the recognized holiday of Voter Registration Day, but that doesn't mean you can't still register to vote. Visit nationalvoterregistrationday.org to check your registration status, get registered if you haven't already, and learn more about the importance of voting. National Voter Registration Day is a day of civic unity. It's an opportunity to set aside differences, enjoy the rights and opportunities we all share as Americans, and celebrate our democracy. No matter who you vote for, make sure to vote. nationalvoterregistrationday.org. If this is your first time finding us, please consider subscribing. We are on Apple, Spotify, Google, and wherever you generally get your podcasts. Be sure to rate us and leave a review of any of our shows. We always appreciate your feedback. Follow us on social media. All of our links will be in the bottom of our show notes. And now, without further ado, this is the SNSW Podcast. But it's all relative.
Thanks, Craig, and welcome everyone to episode 8 of the SNSW podcast. My name is Michael Marcangelo. I'm your host for tonight's episode, joined alongside Broadway Joe Malkin and the real BK Bob Kelly. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Great. Joe?
I'm doing well, hanging in there. Nice, interesting week 2 of the NFL and a weird Eastern Conference final, but we're doing well.
Yeah, and I think that's a great place to start. I think week 2 of the NFL, we saw a lot of things happen, but let's start with the New England Patriots loss to the Seattle Seahawks, 35-30. Just a little bit of information on that game. Cam Newton throws for almost 400 yards, throws for a touchdown, rushes for 2 more. They get to the 1-yard line with 1 second left and just can't hammer that ball across the goal line. But I think the big thing, James White, huge tragedy that happened before the game that was definitely weighing on everybody's mind. So I think we have a lot to unpack in this game. Joe, what is your biggest takeaway from the Week 2 game with the New England Patriots?
It's interesting. I actually have 2, but one is Julian Edelman's performance in this game. I hope he got a good night's sleep on Sunday night and enjoyed a day off on Monday. 8 catches, 179 yards, a career high for him. My other takeaway is that this Patriots team is going to be for real, and they were enjoyable to watch on Sunday. It was definitely a different feel altogether in week 2. This whole season has been a different feel. There's been no preseason, which has caused a lot of issues, which we'll get to as well, Mike. But my biggest takeaway here is that they treated this like week 4 of the preseason, week 3, week 4 of the preseason, and really put everything together that they needed to offensively. The defense was suspect, but against a pretty good Seattle team. So I was pleasantly surprised. I was very disappointed in Josh McDaniels' play call at the end of the game. It was the right play call at the wrong time.
So I couldn't agree with you more on that, and we'll definitely touch on that play eventually. For me, the biggest takeaway was the fact that I think Bill lost that game, and that goes right along with what you just said, Joe, when it comes to that play. And not only that, I think he lost that game without taking that timeout, coming down on that big play down to the 3-yard line. He doesn't take a timeout and lets that clock run down to 9 seconds, gives Cam Newton, the best red zone quarterback I've ever seen, one play inside the 5-yard line. One play.
Yeah, but Bobby, I think like Bill has a track record of not taking a timeout on the goal line in big situations, right? I mean, he did not take a timeout when Seattle drove down the field in the Super Bowl that we played them and just made Pete Carroll go nuts. That's in Bill's nature.
But see, the problem with that is that he not only did he not take the timeout, and I don't necessarily blame him for not taking the timeout, but I do blame the offense for being lackluster, getting back to the line, and them not spiking the ball. So I'm not sure that that's all on Bill. I wonder how much leash Bill is giving Cam and Josh McDaniels to run that offense. But I just even out of the guys that have been in this offense for multiple years or a long time in terms of Julian Edelman, Sony Michel, there just wasn't a lot of hustle back to the line to get that next play off, no matter what they were going to do. But you're right, Bobby. If you're going to call that timeout, you call it immediately. I think they were smart to save it, but instead they didn't get back to the line and spike it. So
I do hear what you're saying there, but I just think, to me, the biggest thing from that game was the fact that Cam Newton took that game over, and that's the obviously the overall big takeaway from it is that Cam Newton is real. He's back. Bill has worked on this mechanics, and he can now throw the ball and is just the electric playmaker we remember. But how do you not give that guy 4 shots? He could have easily had 2-3 shots within the 10-yard line coming down to that game.
Because I don't think he needed that many. So to go back to your every time I watched him throw the ball, it had this weird trajectory, and it looked like he was throwing at 100 miles an hour, and he very well could have, you know what I mean? But this thing would come out, and it would hit this apex, and it would take this sharp downward.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how is it physically possible to throw anything like that? It was so impressive to watch him throw. And you're absolutely right that he took over the game. And how awesome was it to see 2 of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the NFL? Even now, they both came out in the same draft, right? They both came out in 2011. They are still now 9 years later, both very dynamic and fun to watch. But Bobby, when it comes to those 4 plays, I don't think they were ever going to get 4 plays in the red zone to win that game. But I also don't think they wanted to give him that many because they didn't want to leave any time left on the clock for Russell Wilson and that dynamic offense to do anything with it. So if you give the guy the right play, see, now, and I don't want to make this comparison all year long, but it's only week 2. If Tom Brady is under center in that situation, that we know that's not the play call, number 1. Number 2, they probably run the same play where they threw that touchdown pass to Jacob Johnson, which is why it was a good defensive play by the Seahawks to take Johnson out of that play in the fullback position, because they were either going to knock him out of the play or get Cam in the backfield. So as much as it was an offensive blunder by New England, it was a great Seattle defensive stand.
Can we also just talk about, so my biggest takeaway for this game is, can you at least just make it look like you're going to throw the ball on that last play? Can you just give just a sniff of a fake? Everybody knew Cam was running to the left. Now, I know that they didn't stop him all game. I get that. But you have to imagine the last play of the game, when you're pretty much just telegraphing your play, you have a less likely chance of making that play succeed, right? So just fake somebody out of the backfield. Just do something. Give Cam a chance.
Well, and that's just it. Is millions of eyes knew that that's exactly what was coming, right, Bobby?
Especially because they ran that play 3 separate times from that same exact spot throughout that game. It worked. I think it was 2 out of the 3 times before that. It did work. One of the times was almost a carbon copy of that last play, though. And I just feel like when the Seahawks knew that play was coming, they had no chance. Jamal Adams was in that backfield before Cam even got the ball. So, like, I just feel like that play call mixed with not calling that timeout. I know it's a crazy thing to say in New England, but I really think the coaching staff and take it from someone who is so critical about coaching staffs, because I've been through some shit with some coaching staffs. I felt like I was watching the Cowboys in that last couple of minutes, though, just because I really did, though, just because of, like, I was begging Bill to call that timeout. I was begging him, like, for you guys, and I just couldn't believe that he didn't give Cam a couple more shots within that 10-yard line. He did put the ball in his hands, though, so I'll give him that.
You don't have to say that we know how critically you are of coaching staffs. I've already called for 4 coaches' jobs, and it's week 2.
Right. Exactly. Right. So
fair enough.
Can we all just agree? Another thing I wanted to discuss with you guys, because this is the OG crew, and I love your takes. Is it not fair to say that the Patriots are better off now because of how well Cam Newton is playing than if they still had Tom Brady?
Yes.
With Tom Brady here, and again, I'll go to you first, Joe. If Tom Brady's still the quarterback, 43 years old, all the same weapons, everything is exactly the same. Do we erase that 12-point deficit in the fourth quarter against the Seahawks?
I think there's an opportunity that it happens, but something you have to look at, and I said this to you guys during the game on Sunday night, one of the biggest differences between Tom Brady and Cam Newton, and I'm not saying, again, that Cam Newton is Tom Brady, but Tom Brady right now and Cam Newton right now, Cam Newton doesn't put his guys out on an island when they do something wrong. I mean, we saw N'Keal Harry drop a pass in this game. Edelman dropped a pass in this game. One of the running backs dropped a pass in this game. And at that point, Brady stops throwing to those guys. But you don't have the ability to stop throwing. So what does Cam Newton do? He throws to N'Keal Harry 8 times. It's a career high, 8 catches, 72 yards. He throws to Edelman, 8 catches, 172 yards. He throws to Bird 6 times. Like, we're talking about guys, in especially Harry, who they've been trying to get into the offense for 2 years. You telling me Julian Edelman, who's been in the league since how long has he been in the league?
Long time.
Has a career high in yards in week 2 against the Seattle Seahawks, and Cam Newton's his quarterback. So agreeing with Mike's assessment here, they may erase the 12-point deficit, and I think the Patriots effectively did that because they were literally a yard away from winning that game and erasing that 5-point deficit that they faced with 9 seconds left on the clock. Cam Newton is right now, and I don't think that'll change because he was the same way under Ron Rivera in Carolina. Cam Newton wants to run the offense that is called. And if Tom Brady got that play call as the last play of the game, he's calling an audible and he's checking down. 100%, 1,000,000%. He's changing that play at the line. And that's what I like about Cam, is that he didn't. Did they lose because of it? Yes. But it's also only week 2 and against a very good Seahawks team.
You know what my favorite part about all this is the fact that we are now talking about in week 2 of the NFL, if Cam Newton is a better quarterback for Bill Belichick than fucking Tom Brady.
But I think it's fair, right? Because we had a year of a mid-40s, early 40s Tom Brady with this exact same offense, and we saw what he did. He threw to his guy.
But to reiterate, Cam Newton is a better quarterback for the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick right now than Tom Brady.
Oh, listen, I'm not saying I disagree with the point, because I completely do. Or I'm not saying I disagree.
Agree.
I completely agree with the point, because I think Bill loves this offense. I do. Bill loves this offense. But it's just funny to me that's how fast Cam Newton has won over all of New England because of how amazing he has been.
I don't know if he's won over all of New England. Sorry to cut you off there, Mike, but I don't think he's won over all of New England. I think he's got a long way to go for whatever reason it may be. But I think some people are still so stuck in the ways of Brady that it's going to take them a while. And what I love about this offense now, Bobby, and I think what Bill loves about it is it's fast, but it's almost fast in slow motion. Mm-hmm. You watch it, and it's kind of like, all right, like it's a Tom Brady pace with Cam Newton ability. And I love that about it. And sometimes it gets really boring, but that's a Bill Belichick style. Be boring and kill him with kindness.
Yeah, I think like just to touch on the point where you said we're talking about Julian Edelman's records, career high in terms of receiving yards. That's because it takes longer for the plays to develop, and Cam can buy them time. Cam's not just throwing like 5-yard outs or 5-yard slants. He's waiting until Jules is like 30 yards down the field, and he's already evaded 2 tacklers or 2 defenders to throw him the ball. But to that point, like, is it sustainable? Based on what you've seen so far between Cam, all the punishment that he's going to take if he keeps rushing the ball like this, and Jules, he looked banged up. Is this a sustainable offense moving forward?
I think so. I really do. And the reason I say that is prior to last season, Cam Newton had missed 6 games in his entire career. And that may seem like a lot when he, but between 2011 to 2018, so those 9 years, he only missed 6 games. And he's coming back. He clearly looks healthy this year, right? I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about his health. I don't think there's any doubt about his physical ability. I think he's a big enough guy who understands now more than ever how to go to the ground, how to be tackled. And I think he's learning a lot of that while he's here in New England. He is going to be that much better of a player and be able to sustain his playing style and his tempo all year long. And if he's not, we can, and Dave said it in the live show last Sunday when he brought up, how we were all looking at Jarrett Stidham as the guy, and now look at us, we're not even talking about him in a conversation. Well, I'll bring him up here. Worst case scenario, we have to go to Brian Hoyer or Jarrett Stidham. And neither one of them are necessarily as athletic or have the same ability as Cam Newton, but I think the style of offense is manageable because I think it's been simplified to a non-Tom Brady-esque style. Brady wanted to run the entire show, so he made the offense as complicated as he could for Tom Brady. Doesn't need to be that complicated, right? We've seen it.
All right, so Bobby, I'm going to ask you this question because you are the least Patriot fan of all 3 of us or all 4 of us that are on the show right now. After seeing what you saw on Sunday night, was this an acceptable loss for the Patriots?
Absolutely. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Russell Wilson is absolutely the best quarterback right now in the NFL. I think besides Patrick Mahomes. Let me back up a little bit.
So besides the best quarterback in the NFL.
He might have the best wide receiver core in the NFL. That defense is awesome. I didn't expect the Patriots to have the type of season that they're having with Cam Newton. I think one of the biggest things is Bill Belichick with Cam and him bringing him around to the mechanics, him bringing around to really manage that playbook right around Cam. I think this is the most acceptable loss that we're going to see in the NFL this year. Just because of the fact that I didn't give them a chance in this game. And when it came down to it, they were right there on the 1-yard line, ready to beat Seattle in Seattle. I see the Patriots probably rounding out at like 10-6, 11-5, just because of this game, and that's not a projection I had going into the season.
Joe, I'm going to add a layer onto this because you are one of the biggest Patriots fans that I know. Was this an acceptable loss, and is that just because of your expectations of the Patriots this year?
I think it was an acceptable loss based on the opponent. If they were playing Miami in week 2, right?
Yep.
Which I know they played them in week 1, but let's say they were playing Miami in week 2 or the Jets, or name a middle of the road to a lower echelon team in the NFL. I think it was acceptable based on the fact that you're playing possibly the NFL MVP. I mean, that's what everybody around the NFL is saying already, right? Like they're saying right now that Russell Wilson could be the MVP. They're not even talking about Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes in week 2 taking that title. I mean, I have heard Patrick Mahomes, but he's the reigning MVP. So how can you not have that conversation? I think it was acceptable because, as I've said, they treated it like a preseason game. Yeah. This is the end of preseason. The next 14 games are what you're going to see what the Patriots really are. And something else that's very encouraging is the low amount of injuries that have taken place for the New England Patriots in the first 2 weeks. I mean, they are physical, right? That offense has been physical. My biggest problem with this team is the defense. Bobby says 10-6. I still think this team can go 11-5, 12-4 if they can figure it out a little bit faster. But I mean, that's saying that they only lose 3 more games, and their schedule's pretty tough. So
no, it's really tough.
Right. You're right. It's the toughest in the NFL, right?
Yep.
So it's acceptable because of the opponent. It's acceptable because of the time of year and the circumstances that we have in the 2020 NFL season. So I think it's going to get more exciting from here. My 2 biggest worries are the defense and the receiving core.
Yeah. So just to piggyback off that, I completely agree with that preseason 3rd or 4th game take, because I think this offense was the offense that they want. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to Cam throwing the ball as much as he did, running that RPO, having that successful fake, being able to get the defense to bite on the left or the right side when it comes to Cam faking. I think this is definitely the offense that they want to run, and to see that be as successful as it was a great sign for the Patriots moving forward, for sure. Because like you said, Joe, it's going to get more exciting from here, because this is the basement for that Patriots offense, in my opinion.
I think the Patriots win this game on Sunday if they had James White. I understand the situation with him.
I agree.
I feel like he could be not Christian McCaffrey, but that kind of player specifically. And he's been that team. We've seen the Patriots team, that position's been a stalwart from when it was, before James White, it was Shane Vereen. Before him, it was Danny Woodhead. Before him, it was Kevin Falk. That position is so essential. And I think Cam Newton running the offense that he did in Carolina for all those years, that's just going to translate hugely in the New England.
Get it, Craig.
100%.
Get it, man. Yes.
James White has been so underutilized towards the back end of Tom Brady's career in New England. And I think that is like career robbery to that guy. And I agree with you, Craig. And like you said, you have to put the disclaimer on it that, I mean, you could never see what came, and hopefully, his mother makes a full recovery and God rest his father's soul. But that is, and it's such you never know when stuff like that is going to happen. Everything else.
That moment though, where McCourty picks off that pass, runs it back to that video screen, and just goes, "Too late, bro. We love you, man. We're here for you." Like, goosebumps, instant goosebumps.
So moving on to the other NFL Week 2 action. Obviously, it was not a particularly great fantasy football day for the host here. We had some horrific injuries. Obviously Saquon Barkley, Nick Bosa, Anthony Barr, Bruce Irvin, Cortland Sutton, Malik Hooker, all season-ending injuries on top of CMC, Sterling Shepard, Jimmy G, Drew Lock, Paris Campbell. I mean, the list just goes on. But there were some great moments. The Cowboys erased a 19-point deficit. Recovered an onside kick to beat Atlanta by 1 point. Then we also had the game last night. We had the Las Vegas Raiders just absolutely destroying, I'm going to say it, the New Orleans Saints. So, Bob, I have a sinking suspicion I know what your biggest takeaway is. What is your biggest takeaway from Week 2 of the NFL?
So I promise I won't spend the rest of the show on this, although I absolutely could.
No,
because
can I preface something real quick, Bobby?
Go ahead.
Can I preface this?
Absolutely.
I told you they were going to win this game. There is evidence of it that I said in our Slack conversation.
You did.
Cowboys are going to win.
You did. And you know what? You're not the only one who did come at me with that. So I will admit. All right, I'll set the stage. I woke up in the morning to a text about Tyron Smith. He was out. And honestly, this felt like Groundhog Day over and over again to me. It was Week 2. All of a sudden, our best offensive lineman is out. We already lost our 2 linebackers. We're facing we're facing this Atlanta Falcons team who have a good offense, terrible defense. It felt like one of those days for the Cowboys. And then my nightmares were realized in that first quarter where we went, I just want to let you know, 5 straight possessions. Fumble, we recovered it. fumble lost, a fake punt turnover on downs, another fumble loss, and another fumble loss. We lost 3 fumbles and a turnover on downs within our first 5 possessions. And it was only 20-0 at that point. And I'm telling you, that was a positive score. I thought this game was about to be 35-42-0 by the end of the half. I literally had turned to Katie at one point in the third quarter and was like, let's go to the store. This game is over. I on my life, I was done, guys. I was so done. And the turn of events that happened just is something that not only did I not expect, and I don't know if it's just because I'm a pitiful loser Cowboys fan, but I just did not see this coming at all. And Joe, I give you all the credit in the world, man. You really did see it coming, and Dak Prescott brought them back. I have to say, that was the best / worst onside kick I've ever seen in my entire life.
Well, what I don't understand about that is why didn't the Falcons pick it up? Why didn't they dive on it? I mean, were they worried about the English on it? Did they forget the rule that only the team kicking it has to wait for it to go 10 yards? Like,
I think it was the English. That's what I think it was, and that's the only thing I could think is they didn't want to be the one to fuck it up, and because of that, all of them fucked it up because not a single person jumped on that ball. And my one takeaway from this entire game is, I'll sum it up right here, is Dak Prescott. I know he gets a lot of shit, and I know he is not the prototypical NFL quarterback, but that man is a fucking I don't even know how to describe it. He's not, and that's why. Hey, listen,
he's a competitor. No, he's a competitor.
That last quarter of football was one of the best football quarters I've seen from him from the moment he came into this league, and he took that game over, and he was not going to let them lose that game. He really wasn't. He wasn't going to let McCarthy get in the way. He wasn't going to let anyone get in the way.
But I don't think McCarthy got in the way. I think that's part of the reason why he won. I think the fact that he didn't have Jason Garrett on the sideline is why he was able to do what he did.
And before you go, Joe, I think we should talk a little bit more about this because this is Bobby's takeaway. Was this a miraculous comeback or yet another choke job by the Atlanta Falcons?
Oh, comeback. 100%. Because, and Bobby, I want to take it because I feel like you're going to put the Dallas emotion into it, but I'm going to give you some
I want to hear
Patriots
it. I want to
Super
hear
Bowl
it, man.
against the Falcons energy. The Cowboys screwed this game up in the first quarter. They had 4 fumbles in the first quarter. It was 20-0 after the first 15 minutes. And then the defense figured it out after that point. They only allowed 19 more points after that, which seems like a big number, but you allowed 20 in the first 15 minutes. And then they all kind of figured it out right there in the second quarter. And it was going to take a while to dig out of that hole. Now, that Atlanta team is not what they were in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, but I don't think they expected to be up by 3 touchdowns after the first quarter. So this is why, to me, it's a Dallas comeback, not an Atlanta crumble, because the Cowboys really did nut up and figure it out. And in the fourth quarter, I mean, they not only got plays from their defense, but they had Dak step up, make the plays he needed to, and they had Greg Zuerlein execute one of the best onside kicks I've ever seen. I love onside kicks. You guys know how I feel about kickers. I love kickers. That was the best onside kick you'll probably ever see.
It was unbelievable to see. I saw the messages from everyone moments. So because I have like a behind stream, I saw the messages from everyone moments before it happened. And I honestly, it like took me a second to realize what was happening. and I swear on my life, I did laps up and down this house for at least 5 minutes. I was like, oh my God, what is even happening right now? Because just the way that game went, I agree with you, Joe, where it really was a Cowboys comeback. And like, I'm not saying that from the Cowboys fandom in my heart, because I really do think in normal factions, it would be the Falcons blowing that game. But to see that Cowboys offense start clicking like it did, it just gave me I had a wet dream that night because of the Cowboys. I'm not going to lie.
So anyway, my takeaway from week 2, Mike.
I'm sorry. Listen.
Joe, your takeaway.
My takeaway is that this league is going to be shaken up more now. than we may have thought it was going to be. You mentioned all the injuries around the league. Of course, the Saquon injury is huge. The CMC injury is huge. And I don't mean to disparage their injuries or well-being, and I don't mean that when I say this, but how good were the Panthers and the Giants going to be? I think the Panthers were actually going to be better than we all gave them credit for. But the Giants aren't there yet. They'll get there, but they're not there yet. But the San Francisco 49ers, Nick Bosa, Jimmy Garoppolo, Raheem Mostert, Solomon Thomas, and those are just the notable injuries for that team. That they're in trouble. But another takeaway just from that game, the New York Jets suck. They suck. They're awful.
They're really bad.
And I am still where I said it earlier. Here I am calling for the jobs of NFL coaches. I'm not one for people losing their jobs, but Adam Gase is a terrible head coach.
Terrible.
I, in fact, had a conversation with someone yesterday. Well, who would you rather coach in the New York Jets? And I said Rex Ryan. And he laughed at me. And I said, why would you want Rex Ryan? And I said, well, Rex Ryan brought them to 2 AFC championship games back-to-back wild card years. Oh, well, he had an under 500 record. He was 61-66 when he was there. And Adam Gase is currently 27 or I can't remember his exact record, but he's under 500 too. And somebody, the same guy said, well, are you saying Rex Ryan is a good coach? And I said, when he's compared to Adam Gase, absolutely. Adam Gase is creating a dumpster fire in New York. He just lost Le'Veon Bell. He's ruining a quarterback, yet another quarterback. And I just, to see the 49ers continue to dominate the Jets after losing their 4 biggest pieces was just, it was laughable.
Yeah. I think that speaks more toward, like you mentioned, that domination of that game was not because of the 49ers. I think you hit it right on the head, Joe. That's because Adam Gase and the New York Jets are awful. And like that comparison that you made about Rex Ryan, at least he was building towards something, right? He did all of that. They had a lot of stars in that team. Jason Taylor, LT. But Mark Sanchez is not a good quarterback.
No.
He looked pretty good for those 2 years. Especially coming from a Patriots fan, he looked pretty good. So
but we've seen bad quarterbacks win Super Bowls or below average quarterbacks. I mean, Trent Dilfer has, and that's what I always default to when I have this conversation is like Trent Dilfer has a Super Bowl ring. So you can win a Super Bowl with a bad quarterback, not necessarily anymore because I know that was the early 2000s. And you probably weren't going to do it with Mark Sanchez then, but that then speaks to how I think of the organization down there in New York when it comes to the New York Jets, because I think the organization as a whole is not good.
Can I tell you what my big takeaway was?
Absolutely.
The Lions are 0-2, and they're still going to win that division.
I disagree with you.
I couldn't disagree with you.
Hang on a second. We all watched the Bears play on Sunday. And the Bears, I know they beat the Giants by 4, and the Bears aren't the most they're exciting to watch, but they're not the most exciting team to watch, if that makes sense. I don't think there's any way you can say the Lions win when not only do you have the Packers playing well, doubling up the Lions. You forget the Vikings. I think the Vikings are going to finish last in that division. They're just rough. And then the Bears are going to finish second in that division. I think the Lions finish third there. I just don't know how you can still say they're going to win.
Yeah, Mike, literally one of my – so, like, I have 3 main full NFL takeaways, and one of them, just for you, was that the Lions are absolutely one of the worst 4 teams in the NFL. And there's no doubt about that in my life. There's no doubt about that, man. It's not even close.
They have a lot of offensive firepower, dude. They're going to figure out the defensive end. I don't know if Patricia's going to be there. I will concede this. I don't know if Patricia will be the coach when they win the division, but the Lions are going to win the division this year.
I think if Matt Patricia goes, which again, hate calling for people's jobs, but Adam Gase and Matt Patricia are probably the first 2 to go, if there are 2 to go. And I would agree with you more then that if Patricia were gone and they brought in, I don't know, they can bring Steve Mariucci out of the booth if they wanted to and bring him back. they would have a much better chance because that Lions team has so much talent. And if they can get Kenny Golladay back, which it looks like they're probably going to have him back this week with Kerryon Johnson, Matt Stafford is still a good quarterback. That will be when they have an opportunity to win the division.
Okay, so besides my Cowboys takeaway, I have one question for you guys, real quick. Out of all the surprise 2-0 teams, so we have the Raiders, the Bills, we have the Rams, Bears, and
Chiefs,
Cardinals. Who's the most legit out of all those surprise teams? I was going over this today, and I couldn't believe that those teams were 2-0. Who do you think is the team that is going to be at the end, is going to be there competing for the actual championship?
The Cardinals.
Buffalo.
Whoa. All right, so
there we go. I like it.
All right, so I think the Cardinals because I think that Kyler Murray is great this year. I think that Hopkins is exactly what he needed. He is like Fitzgerald in his prime, just a little bit better, right? He has a target that he knows he can throw to. The team's gelling, and in our NFC prediction show, we all took the Cardinals high at like 9-7, 10-6. They have that talent. But I also think sneakily, the Raiders, they're pretty good.
Yeah, they are.
John Gruden is a good head coach.
Oh, geez, don't tell Dave that.
DK's gonna be.
He's gonna
cringing here.
He's gonna show up in here. He's gonna have his ears ringing and show up in the Zoom call. No, listen, I agree about the Raiders. I think Derek Carr. I may have been wrong about him when I said in the AFC prediction that he was a bad quarterback. He looks like a man reborn this year, and I don't know what it is. Josh Jacobs helps. Darren Waller might sneaky be the best tight end in the NFL, and I'm saying that when he's in the same division as Travis Kelce. Might be the best receiving tight end in the NFL. He's built like a wide receiver. He really should be an outside guy, but
he's as fast as a wide receiver. For sure.
Is. He's so fast. He almost won me a fantasy matchup last night too. I look at the AFC. So let's break this down on my standpoint. Like the Titans 2-0, Ravens and Steelers I kind of saw being 2-0. Chiefs I saw being 2-0. The Bills I did see being 2-0. I don't think the Raiders are going to hang around at the end. I think in the AFC, the Bills will hang around. I mean, we could be looking at an AFC divisional round where we have the Bills, the Patriots, the Chiefs, and the Ravens left. That's kind of how I could see that going. In the NFC, I get it, Mike, why you would say the Cardinals would be there at the end. Kyler Murray scares me, though, because of how mobile he is. I mean, he's so fast. He's so shifty. He's burning safeties.
He's just quick. His feet move. His feet move so fast. It's unbelievable.
I wonder if he can read a defense to the point yet where he doesn't need to use his legs. Like, are we looking at a similar situation to Lamar Jackson where they didn't finish it? This is where Mike likes the paper champions. Like, are the Cardinals the paper champions where we look at them and say, all right, they got DeAndre Hopkins, they have Kyler Murray, they have a sneaky good defense, but can they put it together at the end with a mobile quarterback who hasn't yet gotten there? I mean,
just to be clear, the paper champions take was because you guys were just touting how great the Ravens were because they won so many games, and then when they got to the playoffs, they lost.
But the Patriots had great teams that got to the playoffs and lost. So I mean, we're also talking about a first-year quarterback, right? So I could say the same thing to you about the Cardinals.
Oh, you mean last year?
Yeah, last year. I could say the same thing to you about Kyler Murray. Yeah, he's a second-year guy.
Yeah, but the expectations for the Cardinals this year, I don't think were quite as high.
Oh, not even close.
As what the Ravens were last year. I mean, Lamar Jackson was unproven, but John Harbaugh is a great coach. So we just knew that they were at least going to go 9-7, right? That was the expectation.
Yeah, and I mean Cliff Kingsbury is no John Harbaugh.
That's
right?
Correct.
So we all know that for a fact. But I don't know. I look at that NFC, and I think we've all said it that the NFC is going to kind of be a dumpster fire this year. But at the same time, like we talk about that Saints game last night, I thought the Saints still played well. I just don't think they expected Vegas to play as well as they did. But I still like that Saints team. I like the Buccaneers. I think the Packers are the real deal. I think Aaron Rodgers is back. I think I do. I think Mike, I think that the
hurts my
drafting.
take.
I know it does, but I think the drafting of Jordan Love actually helped Aaron Rodgers figure it out. Well, yeah, but I mean, it's like breaking up with Olivia Munn again, right? So now he's got to figure out his life. So the Cardinals 2-0, the Rams 2-0, the Seahawks 2-0, that's going to be a competitive division, because if the 49ers can get at least Garoppolo back, at least then they have a guy to keep them competitive. So I think of all those teams, Mike, this is a long way around to get back to, I think the Bills are the most real deal surprise 2-0 team.
We might have been all wrong with the Rams. I mean, it's only 2 games in, and I love me some week 2 overreactions, but they actually look pretty good. Now, before I go to you, Bobby, they beat Dallas on just their scripted plays. Dallas could not combat the first possession of the game or the first possession after half. But after that, they were pretty good.
I'm with you on the Rams take, man. I think the Rams are really good this year. I think their biggest problem is depth. I think once we get to week 10 or 11, if they're still healthy, the Rams are real. If they're not, that's their problem, is that once they hit that injury bump, what's going to happen to them? We saw Cam Akers go out this week. We never know. To me, the Raiders are the team that stood out to me as that surprise 2-0 team. You guys touched on that a lot. I was watching those highlights today. I have never seen a defense try and punch a ball out or give that extra effort like I saw the Raiders defense give in that game last night. That was every single play. There was a player standing over a Saints player just literally throwing haymakers at that ball.
Well, it's like that old Raiders defense we saw in the early 2000s, right?
Right. That's the type of defense to me that can take a team that's not supposed to go places and bring them places. Because when a defense makes plays, that's the biggest momentum turner to me in an NFL game. When there's that big interception or that big fumble or whatever the case may be, that's the thing that turns that tide. And when it comes to David Carr, a lot of people do forget how good that guy was 2-3 years ago before he broke his leg in week 16, and he wasn't the same after that. So to me, I feel like this is the David Carr that actually is the quarterback that who he actually is, and isn't second guessing himself like we saw Gordon Hayward do in the NBA, like we saw a lot of people do when it comes to massive injuries, and actually take them to that next level. I think the Raiders are that's my surprise team that's going to take it to that next level.
So the only thing about the Raiders is they've scored 68 combined points. They've scored 34 in both of their first 2 games of the season. They've played 2 pretty good offenses. The Panthers aren't a great team, but good offense, right?
Well, hold on. Like, aside from McCaffrey, are they really a good offense?
I think Teddy Bridgewater has played better than people expected him to.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to turn it around and now go 14-2 without CMC. I mean, that's just not going to happen. But what I'm saying is the Raiders have only outscored their opponents 68-54. So it's by 2 touchdowns. So let's see what they can do with 2. Their schedule is ridiculous over the next 4 weeks. They come to New England, then they go home to face the Bills, then they go to Arrowhead, and then they're home to face the Buccaneers. Like, let's see where they are after week 6.
Yeah, they could be 2-4 by that point. I mean, yeah, that's true.
So before we switch gears to the NBA, we're going to start something new on this week's episode. It's going to be the Forrest Gump Award. Now, before we go into it, I want to give everyone a little bit of a rundown of what that is. We decided that we were going to award one person. Each of us are going to have our picks of the weekly Forrest Gump Award. Forrest Gump, as you know, is a great person, did a lot of great things, but he also did some pretty ridiculous things too. So with that in mind, Craig, this is going to be our first ever Forrest Gump Award.
Go! What's your sole purpose in this army?
To do whatever you tell me, drill sergeant.
God damn it, Gump! You're a goddamn genius. That's the most outstanding answer I've ever heard. You must have a goddamn IQ of 160. You are goddamn gifted, Private Gump.
So after week 2 of the NFL, who gets your Forrest Gump Award?
My choice is absolutely the special teams coach of the Dallas Cowboys, Jeff Fossil. He pulled 2 of the worst calls I've ever seen in my entire life. In that first half, he went for 2 fake punts in the most ridiculous situations I've ever seen in my life. The second one was unforgivable. However, he is the sole reason that we ended up coming back and having that miracle win. That onside kick was completely him and Greg the Legatron, as we like to call him in Big D, even though this is his first year. But, as we like to call him in Big D, that onside kick made up for any bonehead decisions that anyone could ever make. I've never seen a more miraculous thing in my life. If that doesn't describe Forrest Gump, I don't know what does.
My Forrest Gump award winner for this week is none other than Chargers head coach Anthony Lynn. He had a really tough decision to make with everything that happened with Tyrod Taylor. He put in Justin Herbert, who played an incredible game against an opponent that they had no shot to beat. They took the Chiefs to overtime. That is a great, great story. But after the game, he said there is a reason why Justin Herbert is a backup. So Tyrod Taylor is going to start. So you did something great. You had this young kid come in and play lights out, and then you say, and I quote, he's a backup for a reason. You just can't do stupid stuff like that. Joe, your turn.
All right, I was going to go hometown and give it to Josh McDaniels. But I'm going to switch gears and give it to Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings. I'm not even going to give you a positive here. I'm just going to give you the negative because that Vikings team is bad. Like Dalvin. All right, so here's the positive. Dalvin Cook is so good and so dynamic. And I think that he's going to be the reason why they succeed, if at all. Kirk Cousins played like it was his first game in the NFL this weekend, and I couldn't believe how bad it was.
Kirk Cousins, to me, this year is the biggest disappointment in the NFL. To see what he was last year and how bad he has really been in these first 2 weeks of the season. Last game was atrocious. Like, what is he doing, man?
He is well, I guess there's some overlap there, but he is the new Jay Cutler. He's never won anything, and he gets paid a lot of money to win nothing. He is not – okay, he's a good quarterback. I promise you, I hope everyone that's listening today, record this, take a note. He will never win anything in the NFL.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I mean, it was just – I honestly thought going into this game against Indianapolis that I said it in our prediction shows that Indianapolis was going to be a good team. Rayshawn had them winning the AFC South. I had them finishing third, but I had them having an 8-8 record. I think this Indy team is for real, and I can't believe that they only allowed 11 points to this Minnesota team. I mean, maybe we're wrong. Maybe Mike Zimmer is the guy that needs to go. And it was so bad yesterday. He was 11 of 26 for 113 yards and 3 picks, and all 3 of those picks came in the second quarter.
Yeah, he's not good. I told you, he'll never win anything. Moving on from the NFL to the NBA, obviously the Eastern Conference Finals are in full swing. Game 3 was obviously the uplifting game for the Celtics. The Celtics are down 2-1 against the Miami Heat. I have a couple questions. I'm going to turn it over to Bobby to start off with. Was the Game 3 victory against the Heat, are those the real Celtics? And can that continue to Game 4? Bobby, go ahead.
I mean, that's the question that everyone's asking, right? I mean, the Game 3 Celtics were a completely different team than we saw that Game 1 and 2. They played their game. They played it throughout. And because of that, they were able to come away with a comfortable victory. We know the Celtics are the better basketball team. We know that when they execute, they are better. We've seen it through Game 1, Game 2, Game 3. Anytime we're executing, we're up by 14, 15 points. And as soon as the Heat, I don't know what it is they do, whether it be great coaching, that zone does mess with our heads. But when we're playing our game, we're obviously the better court on the team. And if we see that in Game 4, I think we're going to see the same thing out of Game 3. But it's just a matter of, are we going to finish? Do we play a full 48 minutes of basketball? And that's the question that every Celtics fan is asking themselves. I think yes, but only time will tell that, to be honest. I really wish I could give a take saying like yes or no, but like what I've seen Game 1, 2, and 3, I really don't know. I really don't.
I was going to say, is the reason that you're saying that, Bob, is because in the first 2 games of this series, the Celtics blew not 1, but 2 double-digit second-half leads to a team that, again, if you guys listened to last week, I said the Heat were for real. They scare me. I couldn't really quantify it or measure it, but now I can. It's because their zone defense stifles the Celtics, and they are all good perimeter shooters. Every single one of them can hit a 3. And Crowder, not my guy. I kind of like his grit, but he hits some pretty clutch shots. And also Dragic, that man shoots 43% from 3 when contested.
Yeah, Mike, when you said that this Miami team was for real and it was the team that you were scared of, I agreed with you, and I understand why. But what is encouraging is and I know it's the Eastern Conference Finals, but they lost game 1 and game 2 by a combined 8 points, game 1 of which was in overtime, and then won game 3 by 11 points. I mean, we can look at numbers as much as we want. The zone defense is something that the Celtics have to figure out. The perimeter shooting is something that the Celtics have to be able to defend. Their wings are fast, Mike. So even like you said, I mean, you and I have jumped on that bandwagon this whole time. Is that the wings are fast, and if they're not going to shoot the 3, they can still make plays, right? So by the time you're listening to this will either be a 3-1 Miami lead or the series will be back to 2-2. I think it goes back to 2-2, and I think the Celtics take this game. They're quote-unquote on the road in Miami or in Orlando against Miami. I think they're going to take this because I think this is the game, this is the turning point where they figure out this Heat team, because I know that they expected, but I don't think they expected – what Miami was going to throw at them, and that they would be as firing on all cylinders as much as they are. I was more discouraged by game 2 than I was by game 1.
I guess so Joe, just before I kick over to Bobby, what was the combined total loss for the first 2 games for the Celtics?
So they lost game 1 in overtime, 117-114, so
yes.
-3. And they lost game 2, 106-101, -5. So it was a combined -8.
But what you don't take into consideration there is that they were leading each game by at least 15 points going into the fourth quarter, or at some point in time in the fourth quarter.
So when does it come back to the conversation of how do they fix their deficiencies coming out of the locker room in the third quarter?
Bobby, tell me.
I don't know. I'm not down there, and I'm not Brad Stevens. So, gosh golly gee, that's up to that guy. But he needs to figure that out and understand his own team and make that adjustment so that doesn't happen, because we saw it against the Raptors where they gave themselves a big enough halftime lead where they almost couldn't blow the lead in the third quarter. So I think that's where we're at right now, where they need to dominate that first half if they're going to let off the gas for whatever reason, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, and then come back in that fourth quarter. You're absolutely right. They blew the lead in the fourth quarter. That game 1 against Miami. But I mean, now we're talking about blowing that big of a lead and still only losing by 3. I don't know. I get it, Mike. I understand where you're coming from. It would kind of be like the Cowboys going up 5 after coming back from 19 down and then blowing that lead. So I get it, like grabbing a lead at the end and then giving it away. But I think this game, I'm gonna switch my take because I said Celtics in 5. I'm going with Mike, Celtics in 7.
Bobby, answer me this: were the Celtics playing that bad, or are the Heat that good?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the Heat are that good. I think that they're a great basketball team. They have playmakers galore across that team, whether it be rookie Tyler Herro, whether it be Goran Dragic, Celtic killer himself, Tyler Johnson. They have playmakers all over the court, and then you put Jimmy Butler in there, and it makes Pat Riley look like an absolute genius. But I think the biggest thing that we're all overlooking, and the thing that we've been overlooking considering he wasn't even mentioned on the last show, was the absence of Gordon Hayward for those first 2 games. I think he adds a completely different element to this team. Not only does he have the greatest mustache in the entire NBA, but he also brings strength, and he also brings another added level of depth where you're not relying solely on guys like Gordon or like Marcus Smart. You're not relying solely on guys like Brad Wanamaker to give you significant minutes. All of a sudden, those 4 or 5 minutes where Wanamaker needed to play out of his mind are now filled by Gordon Hayward, who absolutely can stop Tyler Johnson, who absolutely can stop Jay Crowder, who can be that guy who gets out on that extra man and makes that extra switch and stops, whether it be Jimmy Butler driving to the hole, whatever the case may be.
Bobby,
Gordon Hayward.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I sincerely mean to cut you off. Isn't that such a weak take? Like, haven't we been talking about the last month or so that we don't need Gordon Hayward anymore because we beat the Sixers, we beat the Raptors, who were the defending NBA champions, and now that we blew 2 double-digit leads, now we need Gordon Hayward?
Well, I don't.
Hot take. Gordon Hayward's overrated.
I don't disagree that he's overrated. I completely agree that he's overrated. The thing is missing him and having Wanamaker and Semi and these guys who don't belong on the court in the Eastern Conference Finals.
But this is your team.
But they don't belong over Gordon Hayward is what I'm saying. But
Gordon Hayward can't stay healthy enough to belong on the court.
But when he is on the court, it's a whole different animal. It's a whole different offense. It's a whole different defense. It's just the way you play the game is instead of relying solely on Marcus Smart hitting 5 straight threes to win you a game, you have someone else to go to. I'm not saying he's always going to hit that extra shot. It's just the fact that, like, you're not putting those extra wear and tear on these guys that don't belong in the fucking Eastern Conference Finals.
But who says Gordon Hayward does belong?
He belongs over Semi and Brad Wanamaker. I can tell you that.
No, but why? Because he's Gordon Hayward and he's got a max contract, or because he's proven that he can do something in the conference finals?
Because it's about. I'm trying not to hype Gordon Hayward up too much here.
But yeah, I think you already have.
No. Because just hear me out. When it comes to who would you trust? All right, so let's say it's 10 minutes left in the game, right? And you need to play 7 players for the rest of the game, and because those are your 7 guys. Would you rather have Gordon Hayward be one of those guys relying on every single possession, or would you rather have Semi Ojeleye or Brad Wanamaker in there?
Can I just chime in here real quick? Because it does sound to me, Bobby, again, that you're saying now that they lost because they didn't have Gordon, but if they win and like they have one in the prior 2 series, they didn't have him either. You can't have it really both ways. They can't lose because he's not there and win in spite of the fact that he's not there.
Well, I think you can have it both ways, and not to spin my take on Gordon Hayward, because I'm really not going to do that. So here's my take on Gordon Hayward. I think he's overrated. I think he was brought in from a Utah team who we've seen it so many times in every sport, right? Where guys come in and they can't handle the media pressure. They can't handle the big market team. Now, Gordon Hayward not only, I think, can't necessarily handle that, but he also suffered a devastating injury, right? So now we know he is in the public eye. He's also Brad's boy, right? Like he went to Butler, right? So he's Brad's dude. He gets the money. He comes here. He breaks his ankle. That's fine. I'll give him that. I'm not saying that Gordon Hayward isn't a good basketball player, but what I am saying is that if you put him out there in the Eastern Conference Finals right now without playing, he's not going to win you anything. He may not hurt you, but I'd rather have the guys that have been out there than how many conference finals has Gordon Hayward played in?
I don't think many. It's just the fact that him being out there gives that team more swag. Having Gordon Hayward being able to come off the bench, having Gordon Hayward there as that reserve player, rather than someone like Brad Wanamaker or Semi Ojeleye. Like, I don't mean to keep going back to that, but it really is that big of a difference between a 4 coming off the bench and between a 7 or an 8 coming off the bench. You know what I mean? Like,
I'll give you that part.
You know, it's just the fact that when it comes down to it, that extra 10, 15 minutes of legs that we need, that extra oomph, that extra jump shot, that extra stop that we need isn't going to be relied upon on these guys that are on the back ends of the bench. It's someone that we believed in so much that we gave all these millions of dollars. And the fact that we believe in him so much is he's giving up seeing one of his kids being born. You know what I mean? Like, that's not happening unless you mean a lot to that team, and you mean a lot to that team. But so I really think that this is going to be the turnaround of this series. I think, like, I'm with you, Celtics in 7, and the reason of that is because Gordon Hayward coming back.
I think Gordon Hayward loses them a game.
I love that take. Two things here. One last question before we kind of finish up here. But my one take is, I told you Hayward was going to stay in the bubble if he played well, and he did. That's why you can take my Detroit Lions take and take that to the bank. Number 2, last question about the about this. Did the Marcus Smart post game 2 meltdown?
Yes.
Make the difference?
I think so. I think it did, because when you know what's the old adage of, like, if I say something that offends Bobby or pisses him off, and then we go out back, we have it out, we come back in, we're ready to go, right? We piss each other off, we punch each other in the nose, we come back in, we're boys again. It's fine. So I think that's exactly what happened here. And I think Marcus Smart was the guy to do that, because I think, Bobby, you've said it, is like, he's that heart and soul of the team right now, right? So if you can keep that energy going, I think it's something that is going to lend to the positive of this Celtics team going ahead in this series. But I don't want to harp on the Gordon Hayward thing, but the Lions are not going to win the NFC North, and Gordon Hayward is going to lose them a game, because how many times have we seen Gordon Hayward not play well? As many times as we've seen him drop 30.
Well, to your point, Joe, how many times have we not seen him play well in the Eastern Conference Finals?
But that's the point. We haven't seen. You're right. We haven't seen him not play well in the Eastern Conference Finals. But I've also seen Semi Ojeleye and Brad Wanamaker play in the Eastern Conference Finals.
I've never seen someone spin a take like Mike Marcangelo. That shit. Did you read?
It's pure artistry, people. Pure effing artistry.
You just took Gordon Hayward's has never played an Eastern Conference Finals game to, like, we've never seen him play bad in the Eastern Conference Finals game.
Yeah, I learned from you, dude. Adrian Peterson's averaging 93 yards per game.
A game.
Final takeaways from this week. Final word. We'll start with you, Joe.
I really like this week in the NFL. Not because of the injuries. I think the injuries are devastating to the game. They're devastating to careers. So to that, my takeaway is, you cannot get rid of preseason. You just can't do it. You have to play at least 2 games in the preseason. I think 4 is too many. I think 2 may be not enough. We'll see next week. Let's see what happens next week in this league. But when you have right now, when all eyes are on the NFL, and you have Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Nick Bosa going down, that's Raheem Mostert still. I mean, he's up and coming, right? When you have those guys going down, there's a problem. On the flip side, I think the fact that the Patriots have not had any injuries lends to their preparation coming into the season. I cannot wait to get James White back, as long as he does come back, because I agree with Craig earlier in the show. If he's there, they probably win that game. They probably get into the end zone on that last play. It's probably not like a blowout in favor of the Patriots, because that Seahawks team is legitimate. I think that Seahawks team will compete for the Super Bowl in the NFC. But I really am so excited for every Sunday, Thursday night. Honestly, this Jacksonville-Miami game coming up tonight is going to be wild. Like, it's Gardner Minshew. Bobby, I think we both love him, even though you swore me up and down on Sunday when we were talking about Gardner, because you were having a moment regarding Dak and the Cowboys.
I was on another level.
Yeah,
okay?
you were.
That
on
wasn't me.
level.
That wasn't
That's
me.
for sure. So, but no, I think right now, looking at the NFL, there needs to be preseason. We need to keep these guys on the field. They are investments. They are human beings at the end of the day, and it means so much to the league and to the fans and to them as human beings to stay on the field and make a living doing their job. And the last thing I'll say, and I know we talked about it beforehand, go vote, register to vote, find out where you can vote. Regardless of who you're voting for or what your vote is going to be on the questions, go vote, go register. It is your right to do so. And we hope that everybody comes out November 3rd to vote again, however you're going to vote. That's not our business.
Couldn't agree more. Bobby, your final thoughts or takeaways?
So before I get to my final thoughts and takeaways, Joe, your NFL injuries take, I think, is so spot on. I think when it comes to simulating NFL game speed, doing so at a full 60 minutes at once all of a sudden is what is causing all of this. You see it with game 2, game 3 in the NFL preseason. They do it 20 minutes at a time, 30 minutes at a time, 45 minutes at a time. As soon as they go to 60 minutes without doing anything else, you're seeing all these soft tissue injuries. So I couldn't agree with that more. My biggest takeaway for everything when it comes to the NFL, NBA, is that it's more likely for Gordon Hayward to win the NBA Finals MVP than it is for the Detroit Lions to win the NFC North.
Neither one of those things will happen.
But I'm just saying, it's more likely. If you were to go to Vegas and you were to put bets down right now on an NBA Finals MVP and Detroit Lions winning the NFC North, if you put down $1 on each, I promise you win more off the Lions winning the NFC North.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The odds would be you're absolutely
probably at the beginning of the season, you would have won more.
Craig, your final words or takeaways?
So I'll make this short and sweet. I would like to congratulate the Boston Red Sox and our token Red Sox talk for the minute, or baseball talk for the minute. They have led in 2 major categories. The season's over. It'll be about 3 games left in the schedule by the time this gets published. But the Red Sox have led the major leagues in 2 major categories. They tonight with Nick Pivetta on Tuesday, starting for the Red Sox. This will be their 16th starting pitcher for the regular season. And number 2, they now lead the league in home attendance with a grand total of 1.
That's right.
Climbing the Green Monster and up into the TV bay and just absolutely losing their mind. You saw a live breakdown on live national television this past weekend if you're in the Boston market. It was amazing.
It was beautiful.
I can't believe that 16 starting pitchers in a 60-game season. Mike said it long before the season, like right before the season started, that John Henry might know that all this was coming. I don't like John Henry. I can't get over it that they threw away a 60-game season.
I'm just telling you.
Are you getting emotional again, Jeff?
No, that was actually a call.
Based on what you guys just said, I was right about the Red Sox. I was right about what was Gordon Hayward.
You're not right about the Lions. You're not right.
Could be right about the.
I saw it coming. You're wrong.
But my biggest takeaway is this is still LeBron's league. It doesn't matter. If Larry Bird is on the Celtics in his prime, we're not beating the Lakers this year with that supporting cast he has. So the Lakers are going to win the NBA Finals, and I just don't understand how anyone could have a dissenting opinion. LeBron is still the man. And an old wrestling adage, Joe, I know that you're kind of twisting in your chair here. To be the man, you got to beat the man, and nobody is beating that man.
But that man has been beat.
Not this year.
Not this year, but he's been beat. He can't decide what team he wants to be on because every time they figure it out, there's so much dissension in the next 2 years that he has to leave again. So what's he going to do after he wins in LA and then never wins again?
Real quick, can you name one star NBA player, not just like a bench warmer, but a star NBA player that has won a championship for 3 teams?
Well, no, I can't because no one's done it.
LeBron's about to.
Well, but we can't get people in trouble for things they haven't done yet.
Well, you can get me in trouble for this. LeBron is about to do it. So Obviously,
you know what? Gordon Hayward for Finals MVP.
Yeah, great. Well, obviously, thank you guys so much for listening. For Broadway Joe Malkin and Real BK Bob Kelly, I am your host, Michael Marcangelo. Thank you so much for listening to episode 8 of the SNSW podcast.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for listening to episode 8 of the SNSW podcast. I am Craig D'Alessandro, executive producer of the SNSW network. The SNSW podcast is a 1-hour weekly, 2-hour monthly podcast recapping the biggest stories in the world of sports with a New England flavor. The show notes and transcript of today's episode can be found in the description box below, as well as our WordPress and Buzzsprout pages. If you're new to the show or you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. It's the easiest way to see when we publish new episodes. We are on iTunes, Google, Spotify, and wherever you generally get your podcasts. Be sure to rate us and leave a review of any of our shows. We always appreciate your feedback. And be sure to follow us on all of our social media pages. All of our links will be in the bottom of the show notes. For Michael Marcangelo, Bob Kelly, and Joe Malkin, I'm Craig D'Alessandro. We'll talk to you next time.
Welcome to the Reverie Channel, where entertainment knows no bounds. Live concerts, on-demand music, documentaries, and short films, all in stunning HD. Now on Roku TV, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Immerse yourself from home. And on Android and iOS for those on the move. Support creators with crowdfunding donations. Fuel their creativity. Join us in shaping entertainment's future. The Reverie Channel, where every view, every donation matters.
Are you a fan of classic cinema or a young person who wants to discover the best films of all time? Do these legendary movies still hold up?
On the Generation Film Podcast, two guys who grew up when movies dominated the culture share a great film with a panel of young movie lovers and see how it plays for today's generation.
We discuss changes in storytelling styles, representation,
The making of each film, its initial reception, and how its meaning has changed over the years.
Join us as we explore cinema classics across generations on Generation Film.
Electric acid.